So before we get our hands dirty, I wanted to say a quick few things about plant families, because if you didn't realize that many annual vegetables that we grow belong to different kinds of plant families. And within the plant families, there are very similar requirements for growing, especially for seeding. Often they're seeded at the same time. And oftentimes the seeds look very much the same, if not almost identical, like it is in the case of the cabbage family. So what we're going to do is go through this course family by family, and I'll introduce the family to you, talk a little bit about the different qualities of each plant member in the family, and then also show you the general rules of thumb for this family so that you don't have to memorize every single vegetable and herb and how to deal with it. You can just commit to your memory what each family does and that time. So for example, we start with the Solanaceae family, the tomatoes and the peppers, and they like to be started 10 to 12 weeks. So we can think about that instead of thinking, okay, when do my peppers go? 12 weeks. When do my tomatoes go? 12 weeks. Okay, and then the potatoes go when? You know, this kind of thing. So we just group them up into families, and that's how we're going to do this course. So first, time to jump into our first family. All right, so welcome to the allium family, or more commonly known as the onion family. So that includes things like leeks, bunching onions, green onions, and also chives, garlic, and bulb onions. So it's quite a varied group, especially when it comes to seeding. I'm just going to talk really quickly about the bulbs of onions and garlic. So most often people grow them from what would be called onion sets or garlic bulbs, which is basically, in the case of garlic, just an actual clove of garlic that you plant in the fall, and then it grows up and forms a new head of garlic around that bulb throughout the growing season, and then you harvest it in about September, October time. This is not what we're not planting onion sets here, we're planting seeds. So this is a bit different, but those ones you can plant later on in the season, and I'll be happy to walk you through it when the time comes. But for now, onion seeds, because they are very slow to get started, and they are a very curious monocot, which means just one leaf comes up, and it actually comes up like this, and it unfolds with the seed right on the top. It's a very, very cool thing. And I definitely recommend growing onions. But because they are so slow to get started and they are such delicate little seedlings, this is what we start at the very, very beginning. So about 10 to 12 weeks from your last frost date, you're going to want to plant your allium family seeds. And I've got a few different varieties here that I just happen to have on hand. I have different types of bunching onions. And then I also have this evergreen hardy white scallion. So this is a perennial. It comes back in certain grow zones. And it loves cool weather, and it just continues to grow out. Another really curious member of the allium family is called Egyptian walking onion. And it gets that name because what it actually does is it sends up its little flower head, and then it folds over, and then the flower head ends up planting. So it ends up going up and planting, and then the new one comes up. And that's why it gets the name that it's a walking onion. So these guys, let me just get this open for you to show you. So they have this very cool black seed. And it's almost kind of geometric. It's certainly not round, and it has kind of sharp edges. So you can see it's very easy to see it when it's in your hand. It's not so easy to see it once you've planted. This little tool I have is actually a clay tool from back in my artist days, but I use it for seeding, as you can see. It's got a little bit of dirt on it, but a popsicle stick works just as well. And so what I would do is put in a little indent, and I would probably, with these guys, do 3 seeds per cell. But the most important thing, and I just drop them into the little divots that I've made. The most important thing with seeding of any kind is to keep in mind what the plant is going to be like. So you know green onions at the grocery store. So you got to visualize when they're fully grown what size they're going to be, because it's very, very tempting to because the seeds are so small, to fill up your cells, and then you end up overplanting, which wastes your seeds. Most people like I said, just get tempted to overplant. And even really 3 is probably too much for this. And I will have to thin them out. Alliums have the shortest shelf life of all the seeds. And that's really important to know, because I have had packages of chives, particularly. I absolutely love chives. But I've tried to seed them and had no results. And I was very frustrated and couldn't figure out why, because they had done so well the year before. But they really have a shelf life of 1, maybe 2 years. So you always want to make sure that your alliums in particular are very fresh. Speaking of chives, I also wanted to tell you about these little guys, which are garlic chive seeds. Now, the difference between regular chives and garlic chives, there's basically 3 main differences. One, obviously, is the flavor of garlic chives is more of a garlicky flavor than an onion flavor. But there are 2 other significant differences. The flowers of an onion chive are white, and garlic chive are white, whereas regular onion flavored chives are purple flowers. And I actually came across these in my hunt because I had a client that I was designing their space for who wanted a completely white garden. And of course, I always encourage people to plant chives. Like I said, it's one of my absolute favorites. And so how could I encourage chives if the purple flowers were going to stick out in this all-white garden? Well, enter garlic chives. And they grew so beautifully, still growing to this day, and match the motif of the garden, perfectly match into the design and boost productivity. And we also planted them beside the white roses because as a companion plant, it increases pest protection for the roses. So that's just a little taste of what we'll be going through more in the boot camp. But I just wanted to say that I absolutely adore garlic chives. So I've got my scallions in here. I just did a little divot. You can see it's just like half a centimeter maybe. And then I just push them in. I can use my finger if I don't want to use my tool to just kind of gently tuck them in their beds. The other way I can do it is I can just water them in. So if you have a gentle sprayer, you can just spray it and it kind of just soaks them in and levels off the top. And really, that's all there is to it for those guys. When I plant my chives and my onions, I do it in a pot. So a little pot kind of like this. This is an itty bitty one, and I just scoop out the dirt. Filling up the little pots is a lot quicker than the trays. So I would have, if I was doing these garlic chives here, I have my little pot. Just make sure this water's soaked in. You don't want to rush things. And so with this pot and any others like it, you can tell that your soil has been fully saturated when you start to see the water drip out the bottom. So we're not quite there yet. This is a practice in patience. And I'll show you what happens if we go too quickly. Then I dig down to plant and underneath the moist surface, it's still dry. It's getting there, but then it gets chunky and it's a lot harder to work with. So that's why, like I've mentioned, we want to make sure that it's fully moistened before we put the seeds in. And also, the seeds need to stay dry. I think it kind of goes without saying, but make sure unlike me, that you're not leaving giant bags of seeds out where you're spraying, because the overspray can get the package moist, which is no good. All right. Well, we got some drippage. I think we're good now. So in this, with the chives, I envision just kind of like a little bunch coming up. So I would maybe put seven of the chive seeds in here. And like I said, these are garlic chives, so these are going to have some pretty white flowers. Oh, and I forgot to mention the third difference between onion chives and garlic chives is that the leaf shape is different. So with regular common chives, the leaf is actually kind of like a tube. If you've ever seen chives or used chives, you know this. But with garlic chives, the leaf is still tall and skinny, but flat. So it doesn't have that hollow center. Whoops, daisy. So these seeds are actually a bit bigger. And in there, I have the little flower heads. Because when I put them in my bag in the last fall, I was in kind of a rush. All right, so I've got my 7 seeds in there. I'll throw one more in for good measure. Because we don't need to be so fussy about this. Oh, and I shot one across the way. Okay, I guess we'll throw 2 in for good, 2 extras for good measure. These ones, because the seeds are a bit bigger, I'm going to water them right in. And the water just fills up the divot that I've made, and then floods it over and fills it in. If I want to use my tool, toothpick or bread knife or whatever you've got, and there you go. So the garlic chives are planted too. Easy peasy.